All right, we're talking with Brian Smith with Strategy Ladder. So, Brian, take us back. Tell us a little bit about your background and ultimately how you get into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I started my professional career actually in investment banking, and I did fairly well at a young age. Moved up quickly, but I found myself hitting sort of bumping heads with managing directors, and these were the guys that originally I looked up to, and then I started to realize that I had a very different mindset than they did. And so I left that. I left investment banking and got into commercial real estate.
Hmm.
And originally, when I got into commercial real estate, I was coming at it more from like a finance and development perspective. And I had two business partners, one that was doing sales, one that was doing more of like the actual construction. And within about a year and a half, both of those partners were no longer with me, so I kind of got thrown into all aspects of commercial real estate development.
Yeah.
So I had to learn a lot very, very quickly. Um, we were working in a part of Denver that was up and coming. In 2009, when we got started, everyone thought we were insane for being in that market. Within about 3, 4 years, it was then considered one of the hottest markets in the country. It was kind of somewhat dumb luck, somewhat sort of looking at where Denver had to expand. But through that, we focused on working with small businesses. So we're taking large warehouses, breaking them up into, taking a 30,000 square foot warehouse and breaking it up into 70, 80 small units for artists and creative businesses.
Hmm.
And that opened a lot of doors because, in addition to just the commercial real estate side, I was working with so many businesses that I became one of the largest small business landlords in the state of Colorado.
Huh.
And through that, I got pulled into city politics. I got pulled into a lot of things that I never thought I'd be doing at, about 28 years old at the time. And, a lot of new opportunities came our way. So we ended up launching a commercial real estate brokerage that we grew very quickly because we were focusing on tenant rep, and I can get into sort of a unique approach we took there, as well as we bought a coffee shop and turned it into a chain of coffee shops that we exited, as well as running the largest monthly meetup of entrepreneurs in the state of Colorado. So I got very, very deeply involved with small businesses, really from the start of my entrepreneurial career. But I mentioned city politics. I got a little too sucked into it. I hated that side of the commercial real estate world.
Hmm.
And ultimately in 2014, sold all of our holdings, sold all of the companies, and moved from Denver to LA. And initially, I had planned on focusing on angel investing. And I found out very quickly that I hated doing that because on one hand, you'd meet somebody and 3 months later, they'd reveal that the reason that they were wanting to hang out with you is they wanted to get to know you and get access to your money. The other reason I didn't like it is quite often what was best for the business was really, really bad for the founder.
Yeah.
And so I decided to make a switch into consulting and coaching founders. And from that point, I've worked with, this was about 10 years ago now, I've worked with over 1,000 founders, helped scale numerous businesses. I've worked with over 50 exits. And through that process, also started a number of other businesses. We started a group called the Founders Organization, one of the largest organizations of only founders that was ever started in North America. And then when COVID hit, I happened to be working mostly with agencies, particularly in the experiential marketing space. So events, in-person things. So by April 1st of 2020, we had effectively shut down, or what we called winterized, almost every one of those businesses. And I did a little bit more consulting work and then launched Strategy Ladders, the group that I run today,
Hmm.
which is a B2B service focused um, consultancy that works with everything from agencies, development shops, virtual restaurant companies, events companies, property management companies, anyone who's B2B without any sort of supply chain. and I can get more into what we're doing there as well. But you tell me where you want me to dive in.
Wow, man. You've done it all. That's crazy.
Done a lot, yeah.
Surprised I haven't had you on the show before, you know? Wow, you pretty much covered the gamut of, a lot of the really common businesses and entrepreneurial ventures that pop up on this show all the time, and from big to small. Wow. That's you've had quite the ride. Are you living are you living down in Mexico nowadays?
I am. I'm living in Mexico City now. I've
Really?
been in Mexico for about 4 years. Before this, I was living in La Paz in Baja California Sur.
No kidding. Okay. Expating it, huh?
Yeah, man. Mexico City is it's a tough city to beat, and
Really?
quality of life is out of this world. The people are super friendly, and yeah, the entrepreneurship scene is just absolutely exploding here. I think over the next few years, you're going to hear a lot more about it.
No kidding. I have not heard any of that about Mexico City.
Yeah, it's wild. Like especially in some of the expat areas, it's not just people from the States, it's people from Australia, Europe,
Yeah.
um, even Asia that are coming here and setting up shop because you have easy access, obviously, to the States. You have access to, frankly, talent that in a lot of cases blows the talent in the US completely out of the water at a fraction of the price. And yeah, I mean, almost every week I'm meeting somebody not just that's an entrepreneur moving here like a digital nomad, but people who are actually moving their company headquarters down here to Mexico City.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, back talking with Brian Smith with Strategy Ladder. So, Brian, you've had a great history of entrepreneurship. You have started a number of companies from scratch, more or less, and built them up and had successful exits from, if not all of them, most of them. Somebody that's early on in their entrepreneurial ventures, that's running a business, what kind of things come to mind? What kind of advice you have for them where they might not even be thinking, oh, maybe someday I hope to exit from this business. But really, if you're going to be a scalable, aware entrepreneur, even if you have no concept or desire to where you think you might be exiting from your business someday or selling it, you really should approach everything in the way that as if you were, whether you think you're going to or not, because ultimately that ultimately properly run business is much more sellable than an improperly run business. So if you're running it in a way that people want to buy it, that means you're running it in the right way. And so what are some of the things that come to mind for someone early on that might want to think about, how they're structuring things to possibly sell out in the future?
Well, let me first address even that decision to scale and grow because I think that that's also something that a lot of people run into and they don't think about that decision correctly. Um, First of all, when you're building a business, a lot of times that's your complete focus, especially at the beginning. But life happens, you might end up having a kid, you go through other personal challenges, things like that. And if you don't have a team around you to support you, that means not just your personal life is getting upended, but your professional life often gets upended as well. So you'll see people that have gone through, that were solopreneurs that go through either then get to spend zero time with their newborn or they go through a divorce or a health challenge or something and their entire business falls apart and they're put into a really bad place. So you have to start thinking about the future and what it is that you may encounter in the future. So not building, it's you can always decide to go backwards and downsize, and you can do that fairly quickly. You can't decide to build on a moment's notice and say, hey, I just had this health scare or this health issue, and now I need to put a team around me in order to support me. So you need to make that decision ahead of time because every single business owner that I have spoken to, they always come up to a decision point in their business. And this is every single one. This is whether they're doing it, they're 6 months in or they're 16 years in. It's that they have to decide, am I going to sell the business for a lot less than I think it's worth? And especially if you're running a service business and you're actively involved in the day to day, you're generally going to sell it for somewhere around what you make in a year from the business. Or I'm going to go into high growth mode and have to completely shift the business so I can make it saleable. So why not make that decision earlier and give yourself the optionality? And a lot of people don't make that decision until it's too late. And so if you decide that you're going to go into high growth, which it's always easier to do it earlier than later, because remember, you're building a culture. If you build a very static, um, culture of quote consistency, when you decide to go into high growth, we generally see our clients having to get rid of anywhere from 20 to sometimes 50% of their team because they don't have that high growth team. People start getting uncomfortable, freaking out when things start changing and moving around them. But if you want to do that, there's one thing that you have to be able to do as a founder. You have to sell like mad. And I think so often this is the thing that people avoid. They look for, we call it the silver bullet syndrome, where people think if I just get the right offer or I get the right website or I hire the right person, all of a sudden I'm not going to have to sell. And the truth of the matter is, selling is like, waking up in the morning, putting on your underwear and brushing your teeth, right? Like you have to do it every single day
Yeah.
if you want to build a business that you someday can step away from, and whether you want to exit it or you just want to be able to take a 2 week vacation, you have to have that focus. And even taking, and we track our metrics with every single client, even taking 1 or 2 weeks off of sales can have, in a say $5 million a year business, 2 weeks off of sales, that snowball effect could mean somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million impact
Mm.
on your overall revenue for the year. So you have to, it's literally, it's like brushing your teeth. You have to do it.
Yeah. So it's just basically push, 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 push,
Yeah.
make it happen,
And
make it happen, and have that vision.
yeah. Well, and vision is something too that I think, you have to have that vision and that drive.
Mhm.
But I think that a lot of people get stuck in strategy and putting too much emphasis on vision instead of just staying focused on what's in front of you. I think when you start thinking about growing a business, especially until you get up into the high seven figures and beyond, the first like getting up to, 5 to 7 million, it literally is like you're planning beyond 2 to 6 months really doesn't matter. If your business can be materially changed by one hire, the loss of one client, the gain of one client, any of that, planning out 3 years is just playing office at that point. So most of our clients, we're taking these 5 year plans that they have, and we say, okay, let's throw everything away because you can only accurately project your finances for the next 2 months. So let's focus on the next 2 months. And early on, strategy is basically a math equation, right?
Yeah.
5 new clients, 100 new sales, whatever it is. Then I need to hire the next person in this role. Once I get three of them, I got to hire the manager. It's very, very simple, and people overcomplicate it largely because it's almost like a mindset block that allows them to be safe, in front of a computer screen instead of going out and making the sales, instead of going out and actually doing the work that builds a business.
Yeah. It's comfortable sitting there thinking about it instead of putting it into action.
Exactly.
So what size companies do you normally work with nowadays with strategy ladders?
Our clients range from, 6 figures if they're high growth and or somebody that has the right mentality, all the way up to, well into the 8 figures. I mean, we have a few clients that are doing 50, 60 million a year.
Hmm. You mentioned a service business. Like, there's a lot going on in the U.S. these days where you have a lot of these baby boomer businesses. Like the baby boomers are aging out. If you're born
Yep.
between 45 and 65, I think is the main baby boomer age. And so all these people are hitting their 60s and 65 and getting bumping up against 70. What comes to mind like with service business, like electrician, plumbing, HVAC, all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting.
Yeah, those we focus on the business to business services though.
Uh,
So if you look at across the board in the US, only 1 out of 11 businesses that are listed for sale actually sell. So when you start looking at those baby boomer businesses,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them that are running agencies, that are running other, various, sometimes they're, VoIP companies or various like telecom companies and so forth. The problem is that now they're looking at how do they get out of their business.
Right.
And when you get into B2B service businesses, depending on the numbers you look at, it's actually only 1 in 18 to 1 in 24 are actually selling when they're listed for sale. So there's a lot of these folks that have been doing exactly what I mentioned earlier, where they're in the business, running the business themselves. The business depends on them for the day to day or for sales or for some key piece. When they go to sell the business, they realize it's not worth the hassle to actually sell it. So they a lot of times will shut it down. They'll try to hand it over to a kid, or the worst thing that they can do is hand it over to their employees, which if the business depends on you to run and you're handing it over to your employees and stepping away, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I've been doing this podcast for years, and I've just run across a lot of businesses out there that it's almost like the person running the business, where the business relies solely on them. They get off on that. They
Yeah.
love, even though it's ruining their life because they have no other life. They still, like, they're like a martyr or something. Like, oh, the whole thing relies on me. Nothing can be done without me. It's a I see it all the time, and just being around town and stuff. And I'm just like, man.
It's tough. And it's easy to fall into that trap because that's how it is when you start.
Mhm.
And so you have to go through these major mindset shifts. You have to learn how to lead differently, how to manage differently, and go through these changes that a lot of people, they're just not willing to go through. But our perspective, and my personal perspective, is as soon as you start bringing people onto your team, you have a moral and an ethical responsibility to make sure that your business can run without failing if any one single person disappears. So if you disappear, if your head of operations or anyone else disappears, there needs to be some redundancy there. So you have this ethical responsibility to your team to build it to the point that they can continue to have a job if something happens to you or something happens to another key person on the team.
Yeah. How often? How do you get owners to get past the concept of, "Well, I don't think anybody can do these things as good as I can."
Well, that's what we often call a cranial rectal extraction. We have to
Pretty common.
some yeah, we ask the question a lot, who do you have to become for your business to get to the next level?
Mm.
And so this is learning, you do have to change in order for your business to grow. And a lot of people try to build this business around their own limitations instead of using business as a way and a mirror to see what your limitations are and then work through those. And so the way that we approach it, yes, we have coaching and consulting. We also have mindset and performance experts on our team that will work with people because sometimes they're running into something where they're saying, "Oh, I don't want to grow past this size because I worked with a company and I had a terrible manager and a terrible experience at a company that, larger size." Okay, well, then just don't build your company the same way that they had it, and we can work people through that. But there are some people, I don't know if you've read there's an author named Dr. Gay Hendricks. He wrote a book called The Big Leap. And one of the things he talks about there is this upper limiting theorem. It's sort of like a thermostat we have in our lives.
Mm.
Once things start going too well, you make too much money, your relationship with someone is going too well, you do something to kind of turn the heat back down, right? So
Yeah.
we've seen that in relationships where people start to get along well and then things go too well, so then the couple fights. We also see that in business, right? The business starts to go too well, so then they do something to kind of screw it up and create some chaos. And a lot of it is creating that discipline to ensure that you're not doing that yourself.
Yeah. It reminds me, like, talking with some of my Marine Corps buddies over the years. One of the guys was like, so much of my life had so much friction in it and pain, just tough type operations, that when things are going really well, I find myself, going out and trying to find something that's more friction, that because I'm just used to it. Like,
Yeah.
must be going wrong if something's not painful. That
Well, and if you,
concept.
yeah, and if you think about the way that we sort of get conditioned as humans, right? So we have some sort of stimuli that causes us to take action, right? And then we take action, and then as a result, something changes. So if we think about that, I remember having a conversation with an entrepreneur when I was living in LA, and he said every time he saw a certain type of car, which is the car that he always wanted to buy, it always made him realize, like, hey, I haven't made it yet. I haven't been able to buy this particular car. And then that got him to work. And then we would talk about, okay, what got you to stop? Oh, I closed a deal. Sometimes I'd talk to a mentor. He's telling me I'm doing a really great job, something like that. And so what they think is work is what gets me to the outcome, and then I can cool off and relax. So it's kind of this work hard, play hard. But the reality is it's that stimuli and the feeling it creates. So sometimes it's anxiety, it's that feeling that chaos gives us and so forth. So we go out and we actually recreate those things that give us those feelings that we don't like, that then get us to work. And so you once you start to recognize that pattern, you can start to break it. But it's almost Pavlovian in that respect.
Yeah, and sometimes this stuff is so deep rooted you don't even know what's going on. And I'm sure you run into that all the time when you come into somebody's business and evaluate how things are working.
Oh, all the time. I run into it in my own life all the time. It's getting revealed to me again, you know?
So with strategy ladders, how do you like what kind of level of detail you provide with your current business? Like you're running it all out of Mexico City. Do you travel a lot, or is it all remote? Um, doing via Zoom? How many people you got working for you? Like how are
So
you?
we have a
Yeah.
team, we have a team of about 45 people,
Oh,
um, spread all over the world, everywhere from Europe, Canada, North America, South America, Asia. We don't have anyone in Australia at the moment, but we do have clients in Australia. And so everything we do is remote. Almost every team we work with is remote. And so we actually get very granular with businesses. We operate on an ethos of we exist to free founders from their business. So that's operations, management, and sales of their business so that they can have the decision to, some of them choose to sell, other ones want to stay involved and, sort of as a board, like chairman of the board, or they finally just enjoy running their business, so they want to stay involved. Now, the way that we do that is we've got consulting. All of our strategy advisors have scaled and exited eight-figure B2B companies themselves. And then from there, we have a number of other services that we help implement, because the more that we work with founders, the more we realize sometimes we just have to take stuff out of their hands in order to get it done. So we have a recruiting and staffing arm. We do a lot of placements here in Latin America. So we'll have clients that come to us and they've got 40 North American based team members, and we move 10 or 15 to Latin America, and we free up $1 million in cash flow pretty quickly and oftentimes increase productivity. At the same time, we have a marketing arm, B2B lead generation, conversion optimization. We also do a lot with business processes and have an entire business process improvement and project management team. Financial management, I mean, basically every piece that you need in order to run, scale, and improve your business. And with that, I'll add part of what we've sort of evolved into is, because we're working to get founders out of the business, we now actually will take um, either equity partnerships or do what we call an exit partnership, where we partner with a founder, they stay in the business for about 3 to 9 months while we do a knowledge transfer, get them out of the business, and then we run and scale it and get it to the point where we can take it to an exit. So we're really a fully integrated option for founders to come to and be able to get out of their business entirely.
yeah, it's awesome. How does somebody find out more about strategy ladders?
They can, we're on a podcast. They can check out our Strategy Ladders podcast just by searching for Strategy Ladders on every platform. You can go to strategyladders.com, or you can check out my LinkedIn profile. I'm posting up there just about every day really actionable tips um, for B2B service provider founders. And that's S. Brian Smith. If you search for me, I think I might be the only S. Brian Smith, Brian, on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I'll give you the last word. If you're talking to military folks, veterans getting out of the military, looking to get in entrepreneurship instead of going into corporate America and working at the cube farm, what kind of advice comes to mind?
I would say you've got to treat it like you've got your back against the wall. And the worst thing that you can do is start a business from a place of comfort, because you're never going to push yourself into the place that you're actually going to really get uncomfortable enough to grow your business. So if you want to go out and start your own business, know that it's your job to keep yourself uncomfortable and in a place of growth every single day. And as soon as you get comfortable, that should be the most uncomfortable feeling that you experience in business.
Sage advice, man. Short, brief, to the point. That's awesome. All right. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Great interview and look forward to seeing you guys' future success.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
Take care.